FORA.tv. The world is thinking.
I'd like to hear more about Priestley's role as a minister, and was he a Unitarian minister in England, or
Yes.
only in the U.S., or what?
Yes, well, he came out of a dissenting religious family, and that's crucial in understanding who Priestley was.
Dissenting meaning he was a Protestant?
He was outside of the Church of England, basically,
Outside.
right? And so he had, from the very beginning, he was kind of on the out, and he kind of consistently approaches everything kind of from the outside. And I think there's kind of this imprint of his early religious background that gave him that. But his views were, the argument that he made, and one of the things that drew me into the story in the first place is that he had the single biggest impact on Jefferson's religious views of anyone. I mean, Jefferson really credited, in some ways, Priestley with kind of letting Jefferson remain on some level a Christian, which was a great battle in Jefferson's life. And the argument that Priestley made in The History of the Corruptions was that he believed that the kind of original vision of Christ, and this is largely a kind of a Unitarian interpretation of the Bible, the original vision of Christ, the original words of Christ, were things that one should orient one's life around. They provided a kind of moral code that was a great kind of value for one living, an ethical life. But that story had been distorted by layers and layers and layers of kind of theological scholarship and priests adding supernatural elements to the story, adding kind of magic to kind of impress people. And so he believed that to be a true Christian, you had to get back to that kind of original thing. And he didn't believe in a Holy Ghost. He didn't believe in saints and in relics. And so that was, as you can imagine, not exactly a mainstream view at the time. In some ways, it's not a particularly mainstream view now. And for Jefferson, he'd spent his whole life kind of trying to balance this enlightened rationalist kind of side, and then wanting to somehow cling to his kind of Christian faith, and he kind of famously called himself a sect of one. And so when he read the Corruptions, it was like kind of unlocking a door for him that he'd been kind of standing outside his whole life. It was suddenly possible for him to kind of balance science and reason and empiricism with his faith. And it enabled him to say, I'm a Christian in that I believe in the kind of the virtues of this guy, Jesus Christ. I don't believe in all that other stuff. And so when Jefferson went and made his famous Jefferson's Bible, one of the great kind of underground texts of American history, what he did was, we call it now kind of a remix or a mashup kind of the Bible. I mean, he went through and he cut out all the bits of the Bible that involved some kind of supernatural element and just got back to that core bit. And that was directly kind of an attempt to put in practice the theory that Priestley had sketched out in that work.